I think they're teaching the wrong things. Bringing the glass of water is really a small part of this interaction. You might be the first person that's brought a smile or a touch to their arm. You might be the first person that day who's truly seen them, looked at them, noticed the way they combed their hair, noticed the new glasses they got the day before. This is an entirely different experience than having somebody bring you a glass of water.
What if we stopped treating customer service and long-term care as a checklist and started treating it like a philosophy of dignity? Today's guest has spent her career reshaping how staff, leaders, and communities deliver care by teaching them what it really means to see someone.
Welcome to From Leads to Leases, a CCR growth podcast that helps senior living providers transform their complex challenges into opportunities. Listen in for stories from industry leaders, innovative strategies, and insights. And with our expertise, learn how to increase occupancy faster, guaranteed.
Welcome back to another episode of From Leads to Leases, the podcast that dives deep into the senior living and senior care industries, bringing you insights, strategies, and stories from experts at the forefront of innovation, leadership, and care. I'm your host, Jerry Vinci, CEO of CCR Growth. For those of you who don't know about us, CCR Growth is a full-service marketing and growth agency exclusive to the senior living industry. And through this podcast, I'm here to guide you through the evolving landscape of senior care, exploring the innovations, strategies, and leadership insights that are shaping the future of the industry. So whether you're a provider, a caregiver, an industry leader, the show is here to help you make informed decisions and create meaningful impact. All right, today's guest is Petra Marquart, an internationally acclaimed speaker, author of The Power of Service, and the founder of See Me Training. Petra's journey from the Las Vegas stage, where she once performed with Elvis Presley and Tina Turner, that's so cool, to developing culture-shaping training for long-term care communities is nothing short of remarkable. Her See Me framework is redefining what it means to serve with compassion, intentionality, and respect in aging services. Petra, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Jerry. You know, when I hear that life played back to me, I think, yeah, that is kind of crazy, actually. And so I'm delighted that we're starting kind of from the beginning.
What a lifetime we've lived, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, how did I get from the stage to this message on customer service is a great question. And it was sort of part of my learning experience on the stage. When I first started performing, you know, I was young and I was on stage with my friends and we were singing wonderful songs and we were traveling, and it was just a real heady experience, as I'm sure anybody who's done this can tell you. And I thought I loved performing until one night I learned my lesson that is woven into our customer service program right now. We had been singing a medley of Burt Bacharach songs for about 2 years. We did it 6 nights a week and sometimes twice a night, depending on the place we were playing. And we were in Las Vegas, and the Burt Bacharach medley was on the docket to be done. And the other 2 girls, there are 3 women in our group, the other 2 girls had other solos as the medley. And my solo was, Do You Know the Way to San Jose? And I remember I was on stage and I was dreading it. I just thought my mouth is going to lock. I cannot sing this song again. It was just more than my spirit could take. But I remember that the beats to come into that song, there are 3 beats. It kind of goes bump, bump, bump. And then you walk up and sing, Do you know the way? Well, I heard the bump, bump, bumps. And I walked into the spotlight and I was just enduring the dread. And I looked into the audience in about the second row. There was a woman who literally slid forward on her seat and sat up really straight. And I could tell she really wanted to hear this song. And so in that moment, I learned that my interaction with her wasn't about me and how bored I was and how much I couldn't stand to hear the song again. This moment was about her. And when I began to change my thinking that performing and delivering works of art or songs, whatever it might be, is about the other and not yourself. When my voice touched her heart, then I really understood joy on stage. It was fun until that moment. But after that moment, I realized When you're doing something that somebody's paying for, you owe it to them to stand up and do it at your best. And that transferred right over to customer service. Because I know that customers can be dreadful. I know you're tired. I know you've got family problems. There are all kinds of things that happen. But when you go in to meet with a resident and you walk into that room, the spotlight is on them. And once you get that, I want you to know providing great service is really easy.
And I know now you've developed your CME training in response to a massive crisis in Minnesota. There was over 24,000 unresolved complaints. What was your mindset when you took that on?
I was sort of already in the place of transferring what I had learned. When I left music, I was hired at a college to work in their customized training department. And I got there because the interim job I had between singing and doing this was I worked in property management. And I oversaw the management of about 20 apartment communities. And I really didn't like the job. It wasn't me. It was against my nature. I'd be more apt to try to find somebody to help find a house than I would kick them out because they didn't pay their rent. But I did love a part of the job, and that was the part of training, hiring, training, writing manuals. And I loved doing that. And I heard of a job opening at a local college in their customized training department, got the job. And as soon as I got the job, a woman who had written a program called Treating Your Customers Like Gold had left because she was so successful. She was able to take the show on the road. And so I became the stepmother of that program. And a door opened for me. And that was when the Mall of America was searching for somebody to write a customer service program for their employees. I got the call through the school. And I was able to write that program. And you know what? Once I wrote that program, everything else came easy. After that, I wrote service training programs for US Bank, the Target Center Arena, Honeywell Space Systems. I was a consultant to Mayo Clinic for about 9 years. And so it was just like I all of a sudden overnight became an expert in customer service. And in the early years, I promise you, there was a lot of faking going on. I would see people taking notes when I was speaking, and I wanted to say, what are you writing down? I don't know what I'm talking about. But eventually you get really good at something. And I felt that I had sort of arrived at that place. And there were several things that happened that made me, in addition to what you're referencing, and I'll tell you about that in a second, but there were a couple other things that happened that I thought, I need to get into this sector of business, into long-term care. Number one, I had a friend injured. She fell on the ice. Of course, we live in Minnesota, and she had a bad break. And she had surgery, and she went into transition care, and she was there. Now, I want you to hear what happened to her the first night. She was sort of out of it. You know how that happens when somebody's been in surgery?
Yeah.
She buzzed for, did the call, push the button for somebody to come and help her use the restroom. Well, she pushed the button, but then she sort of drifted back off and fell back asleep. She said she was only asleep for a few minutes, and all of a sudden she felt something, a presence. And she opened her eyes, and there was someone standing at the end of her bed with a hooded sweatshirt pulled up. And she panicked, and she just said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And the person didn't answer. And so consequently, obviously, she was really freaked out and afraid. Well, eventually somebody came and helped her, and she got up. Well, this was indeed a CNA on duty at night who had come in. It was a guy. Now, that can happen. I'll give you that. But what really surprised me is he had his job for months after that. And I said to my friend, "Did you tell the manager?" And she said, "Yeah, I did, but nothing happened." So I became really suspicious and somewhat worried about what kind of preparation somebody had had. And so I started looking at some of the long-term care communities training material. What did it look like? What did it include? And I'm going to be straight up honest with you. I thought it was degrading. It was so elementary and so watered down that it basically treated, I think, the employee watching it or taking the class, that what they did wasn't that sophisticated and it wasn't really a professional. We're just going to give you a couple of things to think about. So with my friend Mary, and with that kind of review of material, and with what you brought up, the state of Minnesota found itself in a position that the Department of Health had received 24,000 unresolved complaints.
Wow.
And they included neglect, they included abuse, they included injury. But you know what? The public didn't know that all communities, all long-term care communities have to report if a resident trips and stubs their toe. And that was one of the 24,000. But you can imagine the image that was going around the state on what it was like to live in long-term care. During that time, I was sort of finishing up the program that I was writing for long-term care. And I happened to know the commissioner of health in Minnesota. He had been the director of health at the University of Minnesota, and I had done quite a bit of work with him. So after I saw this in the paper, it was in the paper every day, just every day. When people do really nice things and help people out, you never read about it. But as soon as there's bad news, it was page after page on
Always,
how
of course.
horrible it was in long-term care. You know how that is. Good news is always more interesting. So I called the commissioner of health and I said, you know what? You have got a PR nightmare on your hands. People don't want to go into long-term care, and the people who have loved ones in long-term care, they want to take them out. I said, I have a program that I've been working on and it's almost done. I think if I partner with the state, maybe we can put that out to all the constituents that this is what we're doing about what you've been reading about. But unfortunately, he lost his job prior to that due to the chaos and the news. So it kind of went dormant from there. But I decided that the need was still there. And even though I wasn't able to do something for all of the citizens of the state and provide something that they could be comforted by, I did have the opportunity to create the program, See Me, Person-Centered Customer Service Training. And so it still lives, but we didn't get a chance to take care of that. But thanks for asking that question. It was quite a time for us here in Minnesota, and it was certainly a time that gave me an opportunity to do something good for people.
Yeah. Yeah, what an opportunity to help turn things around like that. That's excellent. Right. So how does See Me training differ from other traditional service training programs? Like, what's the core philosophy around it?
Well, I can only base it on what I saw when I did the review of some of those other customer service training programs. I haven't seen all of the customer service training programs in the country. But I would say this, I can't imagine there's one better than ours. First of all, the material that we created and based it on were the tenets of service that major organizations said are critical to customer satisfaction. We also filmed everything. The whole thing is on video. You can use it as a self-study, or you can use it as a classroom using the video for your common viewing. In that program, we've got 15 modules that address a variety, it's very comprehensive, of things that actually happen. And the really exciting, fun thing for us was we got to film them inside long-term care communities. We used the staff and we used the residents as our cast. And we actually did not start filming until we ran the material past two of the largest long-term care organizations in the state for them to say, are we addressing the right things? Is this really what you want your CNA or nurse or whomever to do when they're in that situation? And so the material's been scrutinized, and it is delivered in such a way that people are not only entertained, but they are informed. And there is a real great learning process. We also have certificates and workbooks and quizzes and all kinds of things. So it's a true class. It isn't just a training like you throw something out and hope something sticks. This is a learning process.
Something else you said too, last time we spoke, which I love, is you said it's not about bringing a glass of water. It's about how you make people feel when you bring it. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, I remember us talking about that. Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge that there's a ton of customer service training going on in this country. And I think they're teaching the wrong things. That's just my bias on this. Bringing the glass of water is really a small part of this interaction. You might be the first person that's brought a smile or a touch to their arm, or in fact, what the program is called See Me. You might be the first person that day who's truly seen them, looked at them, noticed the way they combed their hair, noticed the new glasses they'd gotten the day before. This is an entirely different experience than having somebody bring you a glass of water. But I want to tell you what has concerned me most about customer service training and just what you brought up. I'm sure you've gone to a restaurant, even out in beautiful California, and had a wait person come out a little too exuberant. Have you had that?
Oh,
I've
yes.
had it here at some of the chain restaurants. You know, they've got balloons and they've got, when they come to your table and they're, ooh, so excited and happy to see you. And what do you want tonight?
Yeah. It's like
You know,
manic, you know?
exactly. And so I can tell you on a Friday night when we go out to dinner, I am not in the mood for that, to be honest with you. I'm exhausted. I can have them bring balloons and whoop it up during dessert, but I can't do that right out of the chute. But they have gone to a customer service training program their company's provided. And do you know what they've been taught? They've been taught to make their customers like them. So, you know, be fun, be positive, be energetic, because you want your customers to think something positive of you. But that is not what I believe the truth is. And that is not what this program is built on. Great customer service has nothing to do with how your customers feel about you. It's how your customers, your residents, family members feel about themselves in your presence. In other words, how do I feel about me when I'm with you? Do I feel welcome? Do I feel valued? Do I feel important? Do I feel seen for who I am? Or do I feel like a duty, a task? You came in here because you're paid to do it and you went through the motions. You see, I can feel the difference right down to my bones. So when you talk about bringing in a glass of water, yep, you're delivering some kind of service. There's no question about that, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. In the See Me programs, this is about bringing somebody's sense of self back into focus. And it's a critical part, especially in long-term.
A previous guest of mine, we were talking about just being unseen as an older adult and how prevalent that is, how isolating that is. We were talking about just like the grocery store. If you go into a grocery store and just watch, if you see an older person and you just watch how people move around them or don't interact with them, or try to avoid them in some cases.
Right.
It's very interesting how that happens.
Yeah, and don't forget how frustrated they get when that person is having a hard time finding their credit card.
Exactly.
Or they can't put it into the dealie that takes your credit. You know, that's exactly right. So one of the things that I found really interesting when I was doing research on this is that people begin to lose their self-esteem and self-confidence, their sense of self, starting at about the age of 70. And it continues to diminish kind of progressively every decade after that. So imagine being in a facility and sitting in your room or in a chair in the lobby or wherever in the dining room for hours. And people walk by you. They're talking to other people, other coworkers, but you become invisible. And every year that happens to this person who has been graced with a long life, something we should celebrate and honor, they instead shrink deeper into themselves. You've been in long-term care communities, I have, and we a lot of times see people sitting with their heads down, pulled into themselves, kind of like, I need to bring my world in here because out there's nothing for me. And I find that truly sad and disturbing. And truthfully, I have to say it ticks me off. There's a sense of anger with that too. We seem to be a lot more selfish in this country about our energy and time. And I even want to say that I noticed it, I think, during the pandemic when we had people saying, it's not that dangerous. The people dying are the older people, and who needs them? And I thought, man, this is an indictment on what we see every day. with what exactly you're talking about. And it's just a shame.
I know talking about staffing shortages too, that's such a prevalent industry-wide issue, but it's led to a lot of subpar service.
Yeah.
Um, why do you believe that mindset's so damaged, and what needs to shift at the leadership level to fix that?
Boy, if I could really get paid to answer this question, I could come out and visit you and
Yeah.
go out to dinner at a nice place. I think what happened, I mean, it has always been a difficult job. Being a manager, a leader, a director of nursing, administrator, whoever you are in a long-term care community, it's hard. It seems that staffing has always been an issue. Financing, money has always been an issue. Your customers really don't have a lot of choices. They're not going to go to another home the next week or another facility the next week. They're there. What do I have to worry about losing you? But I think what happened with the pandemic was that I've heard, not every, of course, but I've heard a few long-term care community administrators and directors talk about the fact that, well, we can't provide great service. We just can't. We can't because we're short-staffed. We can't because we've got burnout. We can't because the census is lower now than it was before the pandemic. And it's just on and on and on and on. And you know what? I think a lot of people have bought into it. I mean, families say, well, we understand they're short-staffed. But you see, there's a difference between bad service and being under stress. Being under stress is you might answer a call light later than you wanted to. It might be that something got mixed up as you were talking about. There's confusion. It might be simply that they didn't get what they wanted and they had to ask again. Those are real things that happen. And those service experiences aren't good. But it doesn't have to transfer to rudeness or indifference or people becoming defensive. Those are really bad service things that I'm worried about are becoming more acceptable because they're using their really hard working situation because of a variety of things. So I think that we are looking at times at leaders, and you can define them any way you want, who have allowed themselves to buy into the fact that, what can I do? I can't get good people. I can't interview good people. But I'll tell you, as a manager, a leader of an organization, your most important job is to hire right. I know that's hard to do when your pool is small, but I can tell you that a lot of organizations don't do the work it takes to be sure that you do match the candidate as close. First of all, they don't seem to have kind of the requirements needed to be in that particular position, kind of the highest potential. What skills do you need to be a receptionist in our community? Do you know what they are? Or do you just have somebody come and they seem nice? Organizational leaders need to know what are the behaviors, skills, and traits needed for you to be successful in this community. What is our reputation? And we want to maintain that. I worked with a group of bankers many years ago, I think now, and they were hiring tellers. And they wanted to hire, the best teller they could that could fit in. And so I had them do this exercise that we're talking about. I had them sit in a room and put down all of the skills, traits, and behaviors needed for a successful teller at that bank. And they did. They just sat and they wrangled and they came up with a list of about 12 things. And I came back in and I said, I'd like you now to rank them of what's most important down to what's least important. And so I left them for about 15 minutes and I came back in and I said, do you have that? And they said, oh, yes. They were all 10s. They were all 10s. I said, you can't have them all be the most important thing that people have to do.
Yeah.
So they did the assignment then, and then they came up with a list that they all agreed was probably the most important top 3. Now, here's where we get in trouble with that behavior. You've got your list of traits, skills, and behaviors that are going to be successful in your organization, but how do you interview for that? I mean, You don't say, "Are you friendly?" That's not what you're doing. You can't do that. But here is what I believe is the best tool for leaders, managers, and anybody doing interviewing for new hires. You ask situational questions. So let's just say we're hiring for a receptionist, and we decided as a leadership team, you and I did, Jerry, we sat down and we said the most important thing for a receptionist in our facility is friendliness. They might not be able to use the computer, they might, whatever, but we want people greeted genuinely when they come through the door. And so during the interview, after you confirm, you say you graduated from here, or you did this, and you're gonna confirm what's on their resume. But now you come up to this. I'm going to give you a situation, Mary, and tell me what you would do. The situation is this. We have hours for visiting between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. And it's pretty strict because we have people going to bed and medicines and so on. So it's pretty strict. So let's just say a family member came up to the front desk at 10 after 8 in the evening and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. The bus was late. I've been in the bus since the morning and blah, blah, blah." What would you do with this family member? And here's what we're looking for. And this is what you have to look for. Where do they go for the answer? If somebody says, "Well, 8 to 8, those are our hours and they're late, so I'll have to tell them they'll have to come back the next day." Well, this person went to their head, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That might be what your organization's looking for, people who kind of stick to the rules. But if you have another mindset and a candidate would say, "Boy, that'd really be hard. I mean, they've been to the bus all day. It wasn't their fault. I don't know what I do." You know where they went to their heart. And maybe your organization is one of those organizations, if you're going to be put to make a choice, you're going to choose on the side of compassion or whatever that might be, as opposed to rules and whatever. Neither's wrong, but it is who are you and how would you like to make sure your organization is represented at the front desk. And so when we talk about that and how we indeed can get people and organizations and leaders to do the right things, then of course it starts with hiring. But I want to add another thing to this. Because high turnover has been such an enormous part of the experience, and it's such a shame, people have told me straight up, we just don't want to invest that time. We don't want to invest training dollars in them. But I can tell you this, that when you don't invest in training, you have some real risks taking place. Number one, they're going to do some damage. I don't know what that might be. But you also have habits that begin to grow as they try things out and don't get blamed for them. And I'll do it again and I'll do it again. Really bad habits can grow from that.
Yep.
The real skill is this. It's leaders and managers adopting great customer service skills themselves so that when they bring to attention or reprimand or give critical feedback, they do it in such a way that no damage is done. The employee doesn't feel defensive and that they just got yelled at or I got laid into because of that. Instead, they hear from you, leader, why it matters, that you're there to support them, and you're encouraging them to be better at what they do in every situation. Now, instead of having leaders tacitly put up with marginal to bad behavior, they instead have the tools where they can come to an employee and say, "I really appreciate you working here, and so do the residents, but this situation is something that I'd like you to be a little bit better at, and let me help you do that." When they ask questions of their people, they don't have explain yourself questions. They have tell me more questions, which is a whole different thing. So yeah, those things are all indeed make a difference, I think, in leadership and how they are indeed going to keep people on staff and have them bringing really goodwill and good work.
One word circling around everything you just said to me is culture. I think habits become part of the culture, good or bad. So I think if leadership isn't aware of those things that are happening when their team members are not trained properly, when people aren't on the same page and everybody's just left to their own devices and no one has a clear direction of how we are supposed to handle the situation, what's the mindset of our community, how do we want to show up? Do we want to show up heart-led or lead with
Yeah.
our brains? That's a
Yeah.
big thing. How do we maintain culture while short-staffed? That's the biggest challenge. People use that excuse and then culture goes out the window.
Yeah. Right. Oh boy, that's a really big question. I think what I can say is that if I could do training to only leaders at whatever level they are, mid-management, whatever they are, and they were the only people I ever had in the room when I was doing any kind of work, I would be happy. Because when leadership gets it, it does trickle down.
Mm-hmm.
And it does continue to maintain the integrity of the culture. Culture it sounds like a big thing, but there was a guy here in Minnesota, his name was Earl Bakke, and he started a little company called Medtronic. And he started it by trying to make an artificial heart. That was his big thing. And he did it in his garage. Well, he had one person that was helping him. And I will tell you that the culture of the beginning Medtronic was Earl Bakke, who he was, his rules, regulations, whatever he believed was true, and his assistant or his partners, and that was the culture of that organization. What happens as you begin to grow, the culture begins to change as personnel changes. But if you are looking at an organization that you want to maintain a culture, like you mentioned, everybody has to learn the same thing day one. A lot of organizations hire people and then they have them come to work the first day and follow somebody around. Well, you come to work and you're going to follow Marge around. Marge has been here for 40 years and she knows all the ropes and she'll take care of you. Yeah, but you see what happens is Marge doesn't do that process like you wanted her to. She does it a little different. She learned something she could do and kind of get by. That's what she teaches. Or Marge had a little thing with one of the assistant supervisors one night, and she sort of maybe mentions that during that person's first day of work. You don't want to entrust whatever it is you want the culture to grow from into the hands of anybody other than you or the leader or the director or the HR person, because you want them to get the serum pure and simple as you want it to be. And even in the training, you can say things like, I'm sure once you start work, you're going to notice a lot of people do this differently. But I want you to know why I'm asking you to do it this way. You start out by putting it, in fact, the organization is a family and you're marrying in. And you want to kind of be able to know, where do you go for Thanksgiving? We have to have those conversations so people, before they start work, understand what it's about. And that's why for the last, I think we've been working on the program. We've had it up for sale for the last about 4 years, the See Me program. And we've been challenged to do that because do you know what we get the pushback on? We get the pushback on this. We have so much mandatory training to do before someone can start work. We don't have time or money to do the other kind of training. And yet, before I wrote the program, I did focus groups for families that had loved ones in long-term care. And I sat with them and asked them many questions, but one of them was, so what keeps you up at night? Not one of them said blood-borne pathogens. Not one of them said transferring from the bed to the chair. Every one of them said that they don't get my dad's jokes and that he's going to feel bad. Or that my mother is sitting in her room and no one's talking to her. That's their fear. Or maybe when they do talk to her, they're not that nice to her. I understand that mandatory training is just, so you have to know what you're doing, the skills matter, but I want you to know, as far as the medical organizations I worked with, we have healing and curing. And I want you to know that the medical skills are part of the curing. They go and they can suture the wound. But part of the healing are the service skills, the way they're comforted and the way they're dealt with when that happens. And they are totally equal. If you ask anybody, they're going to say, I want them to sew up the wound, but I certainly want them to be nice to me in the process or treat me well. talk to me, do something that matters to me. And so you cannot diminish service just because others take a lot of time. That's how culture grows. Everybody comes from the same yogurt, when you're with starter yogurt, they all start there and they all begin to grow into that same particular
Yeah.
thing. So that's sort of the short answer. I'm sure we could talk about it for a long time, but culture comes from the inside out. You reward what you value. You can correct bad behavior without doing damage, and you are part of the group. You never are above them or below them. You are part of their effort, and you become part of a team. And so that's how it works best.
I'll tell you, even in my space, we don't hire based on proficiency. We hire on culture.
Wow.
We follow the Jim Collins method of in good to great, to find the right people, get them on the bus,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
you figure out what seat they sit in. And I can tell you probably every one of our team members has moved seats a couple times to find what they really love to do. And that's been one of the most empowering thing for us as agency owners, to be able to do that for our team and just watch people kind of blossom in that space. Obviously they have to have some baseline skill level,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
if this person over here is amazing, they're an expert, they can do all these things, but they don't have that cultural fit, we'll never even consider them for the role.
Oh my gosh. People have to love working with you. They do. I mean, when you're treated like that, when the leaders say, I see you, I know what you bring, I have an idea what your problems or concerns or challenges are, and I'll help you with those, and I'll celebrate you being part of our success, who wouldn't work there? I congratulate you for doing that. A lot of organizations know exactly what you know, but they don't do it.
Yeah. I think scarcity drives most businesses or organizations, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Right.
Do long-term care communities have residents or customers?
Yeah. Well, let me answer that by saying how I define a customer. A customer is anyone who receives the benefit of what you do in exchange for something of value, and they have rights, they have expectations, and most often they have choices. And if the people living in your community have those things, they are customers. I understand why people don't think maybe long-term care residents are customers per se, because it's a very intimate situation. When people say we treat them like family, honest to goodness, I have seen many families that I don't want to be a part of. And please don't treat me like some family members treat. It is something that they try to say the intimacy means you're going to love them and treat them so well. And that is simply not true. Here's the thing. There are going to be residents that you really love. There are going to be residents that you can hardly stand being in the room with. But a casual observer should never know which is which. If you have people that you are serving that are paying for your services, and you're providing the quality of service based on how you feel about them, then I would suggest that they don't have to pay. If they're family, they should live there for free. But if they are paying for it, they are always customers. And you always have to maintain the decorum, dignity that we always have to give to any customer. And that line, that gray line about, your family and all of this, it sounds nice on paper, but in reality, it cannot exist. And so when we talk about what we call, I ran into the same problem when I was doing work for medical centers. We can't call our patients customers. That's just too, disenfranchised. That's just too haphazard. But the reality is they are. If they pay for what you're doing, serving your service, and they have other places they could go, and they have expectations of you, and they have rights, and they pay you, those are customers. And so I would hope if somebody's lived in your community for 10 years, when you walk through the door, you still understand that you are there to provide a service to a paying customer. And every paying customer should be treated really well. So treat them all like family if you come from a good family.
Only if you come from a good family.
Yeah, only if you do. Yes.
There was a 2021 study that was published that said the fear of retaliation remains the top reason residents don't report mistreatment or neglect in care settings. Can you talk about the silent fears that residents
Yeah.
carry?
Yeah, I sure can. One of the things we know about people in long-term care communities, probably starting with senior high rises and senior living, and then it goes to assisted living and skilled nursing all the way through, is that we begin to lose our power. And power is something that all of our lives we're aware of. Little guys know what it's like to be in a fight with a big guy. And females know what it's like to be bullied by a guy or a big girl. And you start going through your life and you're kind of always measuring, how am I going to survive in this particular situation? And we might not make that dramatic, but we're also wondering, where do I fit here? Am I going to be okay? As you age and your bodies begin to sort of turn on you, you can't get up as fast. Your legs are shaky. You can't open a jar. You can't take the medicine. You can't open all of those things. Everything that we stop being able to do disempowers us. And as we become less and less powerful physically, we oftentimes become less and less powerful. Our sense of self, our self-esteem, who I am, as well, emotionally, psychologically, and personally. We begin to fade away. And as we do that, we don't feel we can defend ourselves in any capacity. That means physically, emotionally, or mentally. My grandmother, many years ago, was in a long-term care community. I went to see her. And I remember I went into the room and I said, "How you doing, Grandma?" And she said, "No, not good." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" And she said, and she had a heavy Norwegian brogue. She said that she had tried to call her brother Nils in Norway, and nobody would help her do it. And of course, I got really huffy. I said, "Well, I'm going to go find somebody and I'm going to tell them that you need help and I'll take care of it." And she said, no, don't do this. And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because I'm afraid they're not going to be nice to me when you," and you know what? That can still be happening in a lot of organizations around the country today. I'm not going to tell you about my unhappiness. I'm not going to tell you how diminished I felt when you talked to me that way. I'm not going to hold myself up and dignity and asking you to be dignified as you deal with me. I'm not going to do that because I'm afraid of what you're going to do. This doesn't mean that somebody's going to come into the room in the night and, do something horrific. But it does mean with that, turn on your light, your call light for help, they're not going to come. They'll wait. You'll be the last one on the list. So they fake it. I think that is probably one of the most terrifying things as we all think about going into some sort of aging care services one day, would be the fact that I would be a victim of someone else's cruelty. And it's a real thing. Service cannot stop a cruel person from doing something cruel. No training in the world will do that. That's why I mentioned hiring is so important. If you hire somebody who doesn't turn out to be what you thought, I don't care how much hassle it is, you've got to let them go. If they really did not turn out to be the person that you thought they were. And I will tell you that no training and no salary can make the wrong person the right person. So if somebody really wants to scare somebody, they're going to do it. That guy that scared my friend that night should have been fired on the spot. But they were short-staffed and they didn't want to have to hire somebody new. And that thinking has to go away. Because I would rather wait for my call to be answered than to have somebody walk in the room and threaten my life. At least that's how she felt. And you can't have people like that on staff.
On a lesser scale to fear of retaliation, I also think there's a fear of being a burden. I noticed every older adult I've ever had in my life has always said, "I didn't want to bother you with that," or "I didn't want to make that your problem," or, they internalize so much. as they age. And I'm curious if you see that a lot too, and if that's something that we can help with, or if that's just, the mindset of somebody who's more reliant on someone than they were.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that part of the problem is as you lose self-esteem, you have to apologize for taking up space on earth. You don't feel like you've got the right to do anything. And I have seen that many times with aging people apologizing for having to take someone's time. And of course, truthfully, it's really hard to restore self-esteem in someone who's lost it. So no matter if you say to the people in your life that are apologizing, oh, but no, I love being with you. Happy to do it. This is not going to change how they feel, because this is the nature of aging. As you lose your usefulness, your perceived sense of importance is, you could almost say there's not a lot that you could do, but sort of that's true. It's almost like the person you're trying to counsel and say, no, I'm glad to do it. They need to say, I'm losing my sense of self. I don't feel like I did. I need help. And they need some professional help to help them restore that. But unfortunately, most of the people, no matter how much they love them and want to support them, when you've lost that within yourself, it has to be built back within yourself. And that usually is with professional help. I'm still encouraging you to tell them, oh, it's no problem. I love doing it for you. But don't expect it's going to change their behavior, because that loss inside themselves is genuine. Yeah. We have been identified for too long on what we do, what we contribute, that we can possibly now, at this point, not contributing at all, not doing anything. It's hard to fill that back up with something, but it's going to be our individual responsibility to find our own self.
Yeah. So it's so tough. Going back to leadership a little bit, I know I've seen this a lot with anyone who sells training. When you're in a session, when you're presenting to a group, everyone's excited. Everyone, everyone raises their hand, especially if you're asking them, is customer service important? Everybody's hand goes up. But then when it comes time for them to commit to doing the training, like you were saying earlier, they're saying, we already have all these other trainings that we have. Why do you think there's such a disconnect between what leaders say and what they're willing to invest in?
Boy, I wish I had that answer. I really do. But I will tell you, there are some thoughts around it. First of all, I think part of it has to do, again, with the heavy load that they carry, I'm not sure. Let me just say it this way. I know that the bank called me, and the mall and all these places, really because they want their customers to be happy. They really want you to have a nice time at the Target Center Arena when you go in there for a basketball game or whatever it is. They don't want mopiness anywhere. They want that at the bank. They want the energy when you come in. They want you back again and again. But the risk of losing customers in long-term care facilities is pretty minimal. Family members took all their energy to get them to go in here. They know the ropes at this facility. Mom knows she can wheel down there and she can get this. So taking them out to another facility is really not practical. The family members, and this sounds just cruel, and I don't mean it. I know many, many family members come loyally and they love their loved ones, but a lot of family members are just glad to have them taken care of somewhere else, because they were so worried and nervous about them living at home, and they were burdened if they lived with them because they hardly could go to work, afraid what would happen. So there's this unloading of the responsibility, which is a combination of grief and guilt. The families feel guilty and they feel grief all at the same time. So what we have to do basically in finding out indeed why leaders need to look at this is to first of all understand that just because they're not going to leave as easily as another industry doesn't mean that you can ignore it. I'll tell you what happens out there. The resident might not leave, but the family will be bad-mouthing it. So anybody who's saying we don't have to do customer service training because where are they going to go? They're not going to go anyplace else, especially small towns. There's maybe one facility or two in the whole town. Where are they going to go? Go ahead and go. So the reality of it is that even though family members may not move them out, they are sitting at the local cafe saying, yeah, I was at my mom last night. She's da da da. And they blab the whole story. Sometimes people in the next booth hear it. So it doesn't go without some sort of punishment or effect. The other thing about it is that, I think I mentioned this and alluded to it, is that the investment in an employee, first of all, the mandatory training was a lot. And then you want to do more training, and the odds are they're going to be gone by the end of the week. And I hear that a lot of people, from a lot of leaders and managers and administrators. Yeah, I would, but I put all this effort in and then they're gone. So I think the problems with those are around those things. Number one, that they don't have much to lose. Somebody's not going to move out, even though there is bad press. And also that there isn't the time and energy to put into training, and they're going to leave anyway. And so I think that's part of the sort of difficulty in saying you need to help your staff provide good service. They might get it intellectually, but there's no real effect that they have to try to avoid. And I think that's the problem. And I want to always say, because it's the right thing to do. I don't have to give you any. We find out organizations that really focus on training, retention goes way up, census goes way up, complaints to the health department go down, and lawsuits or other actions taken begin to become eliminated. So the impact isn't like real time dollars in the bottom line right now, but indeed in the end, we find organizations that really, really understand the compatibility between skills training and service training tend to have a richer outcome down the road.
I found another interesting statistic around that too. Organizations that integrated person-centered care, there was 31% fewer hospitalizations and 22% fewer emergency room visits.
Wow. I don't argue that at all. That just makes so much sense. What happens is in the skills training, they will learn how to help somebody come up, get off the floor, or if they fall or whatever it is that happens. But what we teach them is how to talk to them while that's happening, how to comfort them, how to help them calm down, how to help them be at peace around things that are disturbing, because many times people are taken to the ER because they're panicking. And the people, the care providers or the caregivers can't discern, is this a real broken arm or are they just really afraid? And so they have to take them in. But when they can really deal with their emotions and deal to their humanity and talk to that, the resident can calm down. Not all of them, but some can calm down. And then you can find out whether this is truly an emergency room problem or something that we can just take care of here. So yeah, it makes a huge difference. Those numbers don't surprise me at all.
For leaders who want to do better, for the ones who are seeing the incentive to invest in staff training, what does service leadership look like in practice?
Oh, I love that question. I'm going to send you $1 for that one. That's a good one. Service is an inside-out job. How the leadership at all levels treat their staff is oftentimes how their staff will treat residents and their family members. It is the trickle-down theory working at its best. We have 7 principles written into the program, and these are the principles that staff is learning to deal with their residents. And that if leaders model these 7 principles in dealing with their staff, you will see a culture change within the organization. The principles that we are talking about are see me, hear me, talk with me, respect me, tell me, calm me, and protect me. And when leaders do that with their staff, they see their staff. They know their challenges. They know their skills. They know their weaknesses. They know their heartaches. They know those things that they carry with them as they work with residents throughout the organization. Hear me. Give me your ideas, leader will say. I love to hear new ideas on how things can be better. And not just nodding. It means that somewhere down the road, they see their ideas come to fruition. They see what they suggested. When we have talk with me, rather. This means that you stop on occasion and say, how's your daughter doing? And listen, my daughter, kind of have this circle conversation. Nobody talks above you or beneath you or below you. We talk together on the same plane. I know you as a human being and as a care provider, a caregiver. Respect me. Respect goes two ways. You as a manager, administrator, director, certainly want your staff to respect you, but you can only do that through mutual respect. I treat you with dignity. I acknowledge your accomplishments. I point out those things that you've done. If I reprimand you, it's in private. If I praise you, I can do it in front of people. I feel that this is who you are and how you can do this. Tell me. If it's about me, it's my right to know. I don't want to hear from another manager something that you're concerned about me or the rumor mill. What am I hearing this about me for? You either come directly to me or our relationship's breached. I've got anxiety because of this. A resident yelled at me. The mother came in. She yelled at me. The daughters did this, and I'm distraught. I need you, manager, to calm me down, not blame me, not corner me. I need you to help me. And then the final one is to protect me. If I'm making mistakes, talk to me before you fire me. Let me have a chance to do it right. Protect my job, protect my dignity, protect me as a human. So when you're talking about how does a leader do the things that matter in order to keep a really strong, healthy organization, you provide the behaviors that you're asking others to provide. In other words, you net it down to this. You become the person you want others to be.
I love that. I was just thinking about how profound that perspective is on leadership. It's not just you dragging people along. It's you literally just being that person in all different ways for everyone. Yeah.
Right. A lot of leaders would rather pay their people to do anything other than have to influence them or inspire them from their own behavior. It's just amazing. So
what should leaders be watching for when it comes to low self-esteem among caregivers? I know that can affect residents' experience.
Yeah, this is really a tough one because, first of all, why does self-esteem matter? Well, I mentioned it to you earlier that we already start losing our self-esteem when our 70s and then 80s and 90s, and it's just down. So imagine that a caregiver or any employee had low self-esteem, and they go into the room and the resident snaps at them or complains about something or gets upset. When somebody's challenged inside that they don't have a lot of beef at home here, there's an emptiness in there, they're going to freak out. They're going to handle this inappropriately because they don't know where to go inside to bring the strength out, to calm the resident down, to even say, I can understand why you're mad at me. I do. I understand that. I know I was late getting here and I'm really, they don't have that. They just can get defensive. They can fight back. They can do things that are totally inappropriate, which oftentimes leads to a situation. And then the family's called in because the resident, and on and on and on it goes. So that's the only reason that I would suggest that leaders, and I'm using that again at all, so supervisors, directors, notice when they have an employee who seems to struggle with their own sense of self. And you'll notice that either by reprimand, when you say something to them, they can hardly cope. And you can notice that in some people just by praise. You can say, Johnny, you did this great job when you did this. And they'll go, oh, no, it's not, no. And they don't believe what you're saying because they don't believe that about themselves. Here's what I want all managers and leaders to hear me say. This is really important. It is not your job to fix this. It's just not. First of all, you don't have the capacity. And second of all, it's too dangerous. You could do something that completely changes them in another way or something happens. But what you do have to do is you have to learn how to say things that are not destructive when you say them. And they have to be something that's innocuous. in that you might say to a caregiver, Mary, I want you to know that the residents love you, and I certainly enjoy working with you. But you know what? I'm a little worried that sometimes you don't take some feedback for what it really means, just to give you some information, and you kind of take it to heart. And I'm afraid that that might indeed get in your way. Do you think that's true? Do you find that true about yourself, Mary? If Mary says no, then the leader might say something to the effect, well, let me give you an example. I overheard this, or I saw the other day, or whatever. And
Mhm.
now you're kind of giving them some, think about it. Here's what I'm wanting you to think. If they say, yes, I do think that could be true about me, just say something to the effect, well, it'd be really great if somehow you could maybe work through that or get some help. If you know somebody that you could talk to about this, that you trust, or we even in our EAP program, our Employees Assistance Program, we've got some folks you could talk to. And I think it would just add to your skills. I think it would give you a real step up on already the work you already do so well. See, Mary can't be threatened when you're asking her to do this. And you have to know that if you don't put it in a way that she can live with, that she can hear, she really hear, then you're just piling on. So that's why I say that managers, leaders, directors, it's their responsibility to notice. It's their responsibility to give some good feedback, loving feedback, I will even say. And then it is not their responsibility to fix it. And I will add this is bottom line, never get involved with personal issues. Let me tell you, I can handle your husband. And I think if you just told him that,
Oh man.
no,
No.
but you know, it's only behaviors at work you've noticed, and your whole message is, I noted this, and I think you could be even better at what you do if you addressed it. And that's it. That's all you need to say. So, and that's why I kind of think in fact, I didn't tell you, I wrote a book. Did I tell you I wrote a book?
I mentioned it, but
Yeah,
yeah,
well, I just
tell us
wanted,
about that.
I was just going to say that one of the chapters in here is on self-esteem. And I am excited to say this became a bestseller. And I actually have to thank the low standards for that particular honor that they require for a bestseller. So, yeah, so self-esteem is really important. But I do want to make sure that line is very clear of what your job is to it. But it matters because people won't handle certain things well if indeed they're at work with nobody home, is basically what happened.
Petra, my last question for you today. If someone listening who's in leadership wants to transform the culture in their community, where would you say they should begin?
That's a really good question too. You know what I think? I think a lot of and when I say leaders, you know, there are leadership teams. It can be the top, it can be a whole, whatever that group of people that kind of influence and make decisions have to ask themselves, number one, really? Really? I mean, we know that customer service is important and we should get on the bandwagon because all kinds of organizations are doing it. But I'm going to ask you if you truly, deeply want to do this. It requires patience. It requires investment. It requires time. It requires sacrifice. It requires all kinds of things. And if you do it not fully, then don't do it at all. I've had people say, well, you know, we did customer service training last year, so this year we're going to talk about, well, no. See, if you're going to do this, this is woven into the fabric of your organization. And that means, and I'll tell you, you can do training day one, which of course I truly encourage, and I have an idea of what training you could use. But you can do that. But that conversation has to come up on an ongoing basis, every meeting. So what are you finding good in service? What do you do? Have you seen? Is there anything that we're getting in the way of service? That conversation goes on all the time. And if you're not going to become immersed in it, I'm going to say, don't do it. It won't pass the Snicker test. Your staff is going to be going, when they say, yeah, you know what, we want you to treat everybody really well. They kind of go, yeah. You have to make sure that this passes, that everybody really knows that this is the genuine article. It cannot be a one and done. It has to be an ongoing training. There have to be all kinds of inserts to do it. if they want to pretend they can take a customer service training class and everything's going to be better, well, I got to tell them they're mistaken. It's not going to happen. A few people will take the information and run with it, but the organization will not change. This is a deep-seated, deep-hearted commitment to being better tomorrow than you were yesterday. And if you're wanting to do that, we would have a program that we'd love to share with you that you could do it. But if you're not going to do it, don't frustrate people by making them sit somewhere for an hour or 2 or 3 and then go back to the same environment they've always been in where no one else has changed their behavior. So I would say that would be my real honest response.
That's a great response. Just culture is a daily practice for sure. I mean, it makes me think of gardening.
Yes.
I can go into my garden and I could just prune a couple of things, or I can tend to the soil. I can, put the proper nutrients in the soil. I can watch something grow from the ground up, and then every step of the way. And that's how culture is formed and stays and put in place.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jerry. You're the gardener. The leader is the gardener. They're going to weed, they're going to water, they're going to nurture, they're going to do all of those things in your garden. And they're going to have to do it until everything comes to fruition. They're grown, we've got the product, we're where we want to be. Yeah, no, I love that analogy, that metaphor of a garden, because it is exactly what this is. Yeah.
Petra, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. My mind is still reeling from all this information, and I think this topic is just so vital, and so many organizations need more help when it comes to customer service.
Right.
Where can our audience go to learn more about CME training or connect with you directly?
Well, the best place to start is at our website, and that is cmetraining.com. And of course, if you'd like to get in touch with me, I come out and speak. I speak at conferences and conventions around the world, and I also do work on site. You can contact me at petra@cmetraining.com. And even if you go to the website, you can still get to us through that. So we would love to be a part of your walk towards great service, and love to hear from you.
All right. Well, as we wrap up today's episode, I want to extend a huge thank you to you, Petra Marquart, for joining us and sharing your wisdom on the real power of service and long-term care. From the psychology of dignity to the need for cultural accountability, Petra's voice is a clarion call for transformation in how we care for aging adults. If you want to connect with Petra or learn more about CME training, her website is linked in the show notes. So as always, we hope you found this episode insightful and inspiring. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, and stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to explore the evolving world of senior care, covering everything from innovative care models and leadership strategies to family support, technology, and the future of aging. And remember that From Leads to Leases isn't just an audio experience. We're also a video podcast. So you can subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify channels for the full video episodes. I'm Jerry Vinci, CEO of CCR Growth. Thank you for joining us on From Leads to Leases, and please like, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone who might find it useful. Until next time, lead with strategy and with heart. Chat with you again soon. Thanks, Petra.
Thanks for listening to From Leads to Leases. Are you ready to fill your rooms faster and increase occupancy? Visit ccrgrowth.com to learn about our Senior Growth Innovation Suite, a proven system to generate highly qualified, tour-ready leads, accelerate sales, and reduce acquisition costs. Let's connect and turn your challenges into opportunities. See you next time.